Greetings, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to Black Bear News. Apologize for the gap in my videos. Lots of things demanding my time and attention these days, and probably for the next month. So I'm hoping to keep a regular upload schedule going, but I have no idea how that's going to go. I had a schedule that I was trying to put myself on as far as making these podcasts or broadcasts, and how the universe likes to play have fun with me is that anytime I make a schedule for anything, it gets destroyed completely and very quickly. So I just kind of have to go forward and do what I can in the time that I have. We are discussing on this channel the Anthropocene, the sixth mass extinction, the destruction of the biosphere. This is the right now, at this very moment, the largest story on the planet and the largest story for humanity. And yet it gets very, very little coverage, and that's why this channel exists. Of course, it's very important how we treat each other. It's evidence of our speciesism. It's evidence of our anthropocentrism that we put more importance on how we treat each other than how we treat where we live, which is the planet, how we treat the world around us. Both of those things are important. But generally, humans tend to put most of the importance on how we treat each other and not how we treat our planet. Strike that, reverse that. How we treat the world around us should absolutely be the most important thing right now, because there are too many people on the planet for this not to be an issue. If there were less people, if there were, 1 billion people or 2 billion people even, we could probably go willy-nilly and doing what humans do, wars, resource extraction, agriculture, blah, 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 blah. We could do all our funny business without it, biting us in the butt. But right now it is biting us in the butt in a very big way, and it's going to bite us in the worst possible way very soon. Yeah, there's so much going on right now, politically, socially, environmentally. There is so much information, and to try and parse through all of it in these little videos that I do is damn near impossible. But I try to cover what I can of all of those things going on, all of those regions of human interest. But I'm going to start with some climate change news and some evidence that this is actually happening, and this is something we should be worried about, concerned about, doing something about, taking action on, thinking about, talking about. Excuse me. This is from CBC, I think this Canadian website. From March 26th, Jonathan Gatehouse, human activity pushing Earth towards 6 mass species extinction, report warns. Human activity is degrading the landscape of the Earth, driving species to extinction and worsening the effects of climate change, says an IPBES report released Monday. It adds that land loss and drought will displace at least 50 million people by 2050, and as many as 700 million over the coming 4 decades. Sorry, there's a bunch of different little bullet points and links here. I'm trying to actually get to the article. A planet in peril. The Earth is rapidly losing its capacity to support human life, warns a new report. Human activity is degrading the landscape, driving species to extinction, and worsening the effects of climate change, it says. 2/5 of humanity, some 3.2 billion people, are already in danger, warns the study from the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. We released at a conference in Colombia this morning. I just covered something about this in, I believe, one of my last videos. The peer-reviewed assessment produced over 3 years by 100 experts from 45 countries says that land loss and drought will displace at least 50 million people by 2050 and as many as 700 million over the coming 4 decades. I'd say that that is extremely conservative. Less than a quarter of the planet remains untouched by human activity, less than a quarter. But at current rates of expansion and exploitation, that figure will fall to less than 10% by 2050. Human activities are pushing the planet towards a 6th mass species extinction, Professor Robert Scholes, the co-chair of the assessment, said Monday. Avoiding, reducing, and reversing this problem and restoring degraded land is an urgent priority to protect biodiversity and ecosystem services vital to all life on Earth. My favorite phrase, ecosystem services. Section of the Amazon rainforest. Okay, this is just a little picture of some clear cutting. An 87% reduction clear cutting in Brazil, which is going on at an ever expanding pace. An 87% reduction in wetland areas since the start of the modern era. 87% reduction in wetland areas, with 54% lost since 1900. A 50% decrease in renewable freshwater available per person since the 1960s. A transformation of 95% of North American tallgrass prairies into human-dominated landscapes, 95%. Declining coral reef cover with just 10% remaining alive in 2003. 10%. The galloping exploitation of the Amazon forest has seen 17% of the landscape turned over to settlement and agriculture. The underlying causes are largely economic, says the report, which blames both the developed world's high consumption lifestyle and exploding populations in the poorer parts of the globe. One of the studies incorporated into the assessment found that 71% of humanity now live in areas where biodiversity loss throws the ability of the ecosystems to support human societies into question. Keeping all of us alive over the long term will take a coordinated effort, says Sir Robert Watson, chair of the IPBES. Land degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change are 3 different faces of the same central challenge, the increasingly dangerous impact of our choices on the health of our natural environment. We cannot afford to tackle any one of these threats in isolation. They each deserve the highest policy priority and must be addressed together. That's it for that article. I will link it below. What I didn't say in my little opening spiel was that I really do think if we were focused and concentrating on caring for our environment and caring for our ecosystems, caring for the planet that supports us and gives us life, if humans were much more aware and focused on that, the things that humans seem to be consumed with, the ongoing conflicts and concerns that we have with how we treat each other would I think mostly resolve themselves. I think, as always, nature is an amazing teacher. studying nature and how things interact in nature, plants, animals, species, etc. Also how the land reacts, you know, dirt, soils, everything, water, air, clouds. Focusing on that could probably take us out of ourselves in a great way, in a very great way. So, you know, get out there and get in nature and look at nature and get out of your house and get away from your get away from your computer after you're done watching this video. Go do something in the fresh air. All right. Next article is from Time magazine. The beginning of the end, an endangered whale species comes closer to extinction. This is about the right whales that I read something about them just recently about the fact that they are birthing no babies or calves. The winter calving season for critically endangered right whales is ending without a single newborn being spotted off the southeast U.S. coast, a reproductive drought unseen for 3 decades that experts say brings the rare species a perilous step closer to extinction. It's a pivotal moment for right whales, said Barb Zuidsma, who oversees the right whale recovery program in the U.S. Southeast for the National Marine Fisheries Service. If we don't get serious and figure this out, it could very well be the beginning of the end. This actually might be a lot of just the same article that I already read. Researchers have been looking into since December, for newborn right whales off the coast of Georgia and Florida, where pregnant whales typically migrate each winter to give birth in warmer Atlantic waters. Let's see. Right whales have averaged about 17 births per year during the past 3 decades since 2012, but all 2 seasons have yielded below average calf counts. It's also, let's see, right whale researchers Charles Stormy Mayo of the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown, Massachusetts, said he was hopeful some calves were born this season off the Carolinas or Virginia, where scientists weren't really looking. It's also possible right whales could rally with a baby boom next year. Females typically take 3 years or longer between pregnancies, so births can fluctuate year to year. The previous rock bottom year for births, just 1 calf spotted in 2000, was followed by 31 newborns in 2001, the second best calving season on record. With future births uncertain, researchers say more needs to be done to prevent human causes of many right whale deaths. Necropsies performed on the 17 dead whales last year found at least 4 were struck by ships, at least 2 died from entanglement in fishing gear. Hamilton said speed restrictions on ships in waters where right whales are most frequently found might be expanded throughout the eastern seaboard to further protect the giant mammals as they roam. Meanwhile, some commercial fishermen are testing gear with ropes that have built-in weak points designed to break rather than ensnare a large whale. Others are working on ropeless lobster pots that use inflatable bags to bring the traps to the surface. It all has to happen quickly. How about just greatly reduce the fishing? How about that? Because we're not just killing whales, we're killing all the fish. We're taking all the fish out of the ocean. That's what we're doing. That's all I'm going to read of that article. Moving on, this is a big reason why we're in the trouble that we're in. We're kind of moving into some sandbox news, but this is definitely climate change news as well. This is from Pacific Standard. Inside the tax bill's $25 billion oil company, Bonanza. This is about the latest tax bill, the Trump tax bill. A Pacific Standard analysis shows that the oil and gas industry is among the tax bill's greatest financial beneficiaries. Last month, during a retreat in West Virginia, congressional Republicans set out their 2018 party goals. Their primary objective is to hold on to their majorities in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the key mechanism for doing so is to ride the coattails of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The tax bill is part of a bigger theme that we're going to call the Great American Comeback. Says you got to do like that when you say the Great American Comeback or Make America Great. Said Representative Steve Stivers, chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. If we stay focused on selling the tax reform package, I think we're going to hold the House and things are going to be okay for us. More than 50% of the tax bill's benefits will go to the wealthiest 5% of Americans, and more than 25% of the wealthiest 1%, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. As Businessweek put it, President Donald Trump and Republicans sold their $1.5 trillion tax cut as a boon for workers. But it's becoming clear just 2 months after the bill passed that the truly big winners will be corporations and their shareholders. Pacific Standard's original analysis finds that it is the oil and gas industry, including companies that back the presidency of Trump, and whose former executives and current boosters now populate it, that are among the tax bill's largest and most long-lasting financial beneficiaries. Go figure. Just 17 American oil and gas companies reported a combined total of $25 billion in direct one-time benefits from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Many of the companies will also receive millions of dollars in income tax refunds this year. Looking forward, the Tax Act then reduces all corporate annual tax bills by a minimum of 40% every year in perpetuity, while adding new benefits that function as government subsidies for oil and the gas industry. The company's activities in the United States are made less expensive, thereby encouraging a further expansion of oil and gas operations. Pacific Standard reviewed the annual 10K and fourth quarter reports filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for 2017 by 17 U.S. oil companies, looking at the largest companies in production, refining, and pipelines that also clearly specify the impacts of the Tax Act in their results. Private companies such as Koch Industries, dun dun dun, you got to say that every time you say Koch Industries, or dun dun dun, which undoubtedly benefit from the legislation, could not be included because they are not required to make these financial reports publicly available. Energy giant ExxonMobil reported $5.9 billion in immediate tax savings as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Now there is a tax refund, $5.9 billion. But also ranking it second only to Apple as the nation's single largest corporate beneficiary of the GOP tax bill. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is the former chief executive officer of ExxonMobil, deferring investments in Exxon during and for the 10 years after his public service, which ends on March 31st, and past chairman of the American Petroleum Institute, which lobbied aggressively for the Tax Act. Chevron and ConocoPhillips, the second and third largest U.S. oil companies after ExxonMobil, received $2.2 billion and $852 million in tax savings, respectively. Energy Transfer Partners, the company behind the Dakota Access Bayou Bridge and Rover oil pipelines, a large financial backer of the candidate Trump, and on whose board Energy Secretary Rick Perry previously served, reports receiving $1.53 billion. Like many other oil pipeline companies, Energy Transfer Partners is organized as a master limited partnership, a corporate structure specifically rewarded in the Tax Act with an extra tax rate reduction. The nation's leading refiners came out big, with the second highest overall Tax Act savings behind ExxonMobil going to Phillips, 66, with $2.74 billion, and Valero rounding out the top 5 oil company beneficiaries with just under $2 billion. All totaled, though, it may be the nation's domestic oil and natural gas frackers who received the biggest combined immediate rewards from the Tax Act. EOG Resources, for example, garnered the third highest oil sector payback with $2.2 billion in tax savings, followed by Hess at $1.37 billion, Apache at $1.34 billion, Anadarko at $1.2 billion, and Endeavor, whose North Dakota oil refinery served as a backdrop to Trump's speech pitching passage of the Tax Act last September, at just under $1 billion. And Continental Resources at 714 million. Continental's Harold Hamm, a staple figure at Trump's side at addresses before oil industry audiences, including when Trump pitched the tax act, is regularly credited as a guiding force behind Trump's domestic energy policy. Foreign-based Shell and BP each reported initial losses as a result of the tax act at $2 billion and $1.5 billion, respectively, stemming from changes in the rules governing the use of past losses to offset future profits. Each company, however, was quick to point out in public statements that it expects the future impacts of the legislation to be positive due to the slashing of the corporate tax rate. This article goes on a bit longer, and I don't think I'm going to read much more because you guys get the picture, I think. Let the money go around. Yeah. So, clearly the Trump administration is benefiting the corporations. The corporations are benefited by the Trump administration. And that's how it goes with most administrations, honestly. Trump just being more, I guess, out there, obvious with his machinations. This is what presidents generally are there to do, is be the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and give those corporations, good old healthy tax break, or give them some subsidies so they can keep on being profitable, even when they're not honestly actually profitable. And if we actually taxed them and made them accountable for their destruction of the environment, they would absolutely not be profitable in any way, shape, or form. Going on to more sandbox news, moving on to the last bit of this video. So before I read this, this is about Trump saying that we're going to pull out of Syria. That was a long time ago. And this seems to be all over the news, that he's, stating that it's time for us to get out. And he actually stated this, I think, a couple months ago. I don't know. It's very, very interesting. One of the main points of this channel is that I'm trying to point out that everything exists on a spectrum, especially politically and sociologically. People tend to get into their their ideological niches and their camps, and everybody over here believes all the same things, and everybody over here believes all the same things. I've talked about this before. So it's interesting what's going on with Trump. I have remained in a state of confusion about the Trump presidency on many levels. I mean, I understand that he, is a businessman, basically, and most presidents have been very friendly to business, even if they're not businessmen, if they're not, recruited from the private business sector to become public, officials or public servants, as you will, if you will. And that's obviously a conflict of interest when the government on some level is supposed to protect people or protect the environment, or, help people not be poor or sick, or, or help people not be endangered by the fact that we're destroying the environment. So Trump is definitely in the pocket of the businessman. He's definitely in the camp of, I don't care about nature. I don't care about environment. You know, business has to come first. We need jobs, blah, blah, blah. And all of his actions seem to prove this stance out. But there are other things going on, and you know, politically, there are other things going on that are quite interesting to me, and you know, on some level, that's what makes the waters around Trump a little bit muddy for me. You know, there seems to be kind of on the liberal left end of the spectrum, there seems to be a lot of people that are just like, fuck Trump, fuck everything he does. He can't do anything right. He's a total, complete, you know, idiot. He's, you know, Hitler. He's a bad man. He's, you know, and I get it, because on a lot of levels, he's directly threatening people's lives and livelihood. He's directly threatening people of color in this country. He's directly supporting, you know, the white supremacist, militaristic, police happy, you know, culture of this country. He's doing all those things. And so why wouldn't you hate the guy? You know, it's weird to me too, because, you know, most presidents before Trump have pretty much done the same things. You know, they're just not as outward. It's the messaging and it's the imaging it's so disturbing to people. And you know, of course, like, you know, on a lot of levels, he's an extremely scary person. But strangely, you know, there's some stuff happening in the deep state world, in the QAnon world, and the, you know, whatever you want to call it, the conspiracy world, even if you want to go that route. The reason why I pay attention to all this kind of stuff that's happening like under the surface is because there's very interesting things going on. And, you know, Trump has signaled that he was going to end, you know, a lot of the conflicts and the wars that we were in, you know, like Syria, but, you know, then he signaled we were going to stay in Afghanistan. You know, why are we in Afghanistan? money, because it's a good business move. That's why. But, and I have no idea what we're doing there I have no idea what we're doing there on a deeper political level, because there's a surface level, you know, who is it we're fighting in Afghanistan? Why are we there? Who is the enemy? You know, like, it seems incredibly strange and ridiculous. So I don't know. We'll leave that alone for the moment. But you know, we have this, you know, interesting developments with North Korea now wanting to talk, and you know, as people have pointed out very correctly before, North Korea had wanted to talk, had wanted to have conversations about, you know, striking a deal with the U.S. All through the Obama presidency, and they were, you know, it was like the answer was no, we're not interested. And I believe even before that was the answer from the U.S. was, you know, like, screw you, whatever. We don't, you know, we're not going to engage in a conversation with you. We're not going to deal with you. And now all of a sudden, North Korea and, you know, North Korea is talking with China. North Korea is talking with South Korea. There is evidence that they may reunite. There is evidence that they may agree to denuclearize. All of this stuff is happening, and it's a very good thing. This is a good thing. Trump signaling that he wants to pull out of Syria is a good thing. As of a few months ago, Russia was saying that they were going to pull out of Syria as well. And then all of a sudden we had all these news stories. Oh my God, you know, like, people are dying in Ghouta, and they're, you know, we might strike Damascus. And, you know, all of a sudden you have this kind of like mainstream media kind of like hype thing going, like, you know, raising the level of concern in Syria. or about Syria, or what's going on happening in Syria. And that whole thing makes you have to wonder who's doing the messaging. You know, why is this message being put out that you know, all these bad things are happening in Syria, and oh my God, Russia's going to do this, and we're going to do this, and then you have, you know, this comes right after Putin said, like, we want to pull out, we want to get out of there, and then right after all this messaging, you have Trump saying, yeah, we want to get out of here, like we're done, we're good, we don't need to do this anymore. This is a good thing. This is something that everybody should absolutely be happy about. So who's controlling this alternate messaging? And you know, before this point in time, what was going on, you know, in the last few years around Syria or around North Korea? Was this, you know, constant escalation of tensions and talk and threats of missile strikes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when Trump got in, all of that seemed to like ramp up for a second. And then it went in the completely opposite direction. It's incredibly interesting and strange. I'm trying to follow what's going on as far as the deep state conversations that are happening on the internet, as far as the QAnon thing that I was talking about earlier, because it's shedding some interesting light on the possibilities that something different is going on than what we are being told. And if you follow American history in any way, you know that that's constantly happening. What's actually happening is very different from what we're being told on the mainstream media. So I'm just going to touch on this story a little bit, and then I'm going to end this video. We're coming out of Syria very soon. Let others take care of it. President Donald Trump has made a surprise announcement that U.S. forces will be withdrawing from Syria, citing the defeat of the Islamic State and need to defend U.S. borders and rebuild crumbling infrastructure. We're coming out of Syria very soon. Let the other people take care of it now. Trump said during a speech in Richfield, Ohio on Thursday. The U.S. spent $7 trillion in the Middle East, Trump said, describing how the U.S. would build schools only for the insurgents to destroy them, while there was no funding to build schools in Ohio. You know, as wrong as Trump is on many things, that's an absolutely true statement. We build a school, they blow it up. We rebuild the school. They haven't blown it up yet, but they will. However, that is an absolutely true statement from Trump. But how, you know, is he actually building schools in the U.S.? Is that actually going to happen? Is funding going to schools, or is it going to give tax kickbacks to these oil companies? We shall see. The president also pointed out the wall, and 32,000 U.S. troops guarding the border between North and South Korea, while the U.S. border with Mexico was not likewise protected. Is there something a little bit wrong with that? He asked the crowd. Trump's remarks about Syria are in line with what he said last month at a press conference in Washington with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. We're there for one reason, to get ISIS and get rid of ISIS and go home, the U.S. president had said. We're not there for any reason, and any other reason, and we've largely accomplished our goal. However, this goes against the previous pronouncements of his subordinates at the State Department and the military. In January, then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson outlined a plan that envisioned extended U.S. presence in Syria to ensure a peaceful transfer of power to a post-Assad leadership. So that's extremely interesting that Rex Tillerson is, you know, messaging what the stance of the U.S. has been for the last few years, that we need to get rid of Assad. And then, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to leave. Our intention there is not to get rid of Assad, when it has been for, you know, this whole time. In December last year, the Pentagon said U.S. troops would remain in Syria for as long as we need to support our partners and prevent the return of terrorist groups. That's the end of that article. Yeah, you know, just very interesting times that we live in. Of course, things are weird all over. Nobody knows really what's going on many levels. I hope that on some level I'm helping people figure it out. If you're not afraid to go find information, look at, go out and research. I know a lot of people on this channel are aware of some of this stuff. Some of you are not. It is just a good thing to take in information from all sources. It's okay. It won't hurt you. Information doesn't hurt. You can think about things that you don't necessarily agree with. And that's called being intelligent. That's called, knowing how to think about things. You can take in information and say, look at this thing from all angles and think about it and like, I don't really agree with it necessarily, but that's an interesting concept. We'll put that over here for now. I don't know if it's an American thing or a human thing, or, our tendency to just reject things like, that's stupid. Or like, no, that's ridiculous. No, that's conspiracy. Oh, that's alt right. Oh my God, no, that's liberal. Oh my God, like that's our default response to things that we don't agree with or we don't like. And let me tell you how unintelligent and uninformed that is of as a human being on this planet. If that is your reaction to things that you don't like or you don't agree with, you are not a thinking person. You are doing a disservice to yourself and everyone around you, and the evolution of human beings as a species. Open your mind and consider things as thoughts or ideas. It's okay. This is also how the powers that be control how you think. This is how they brainwash you. This is how they put ideas in your head so that you don't question, so that you just go along. Oh yeah, I saw this. Oh, it's terrible what's happening. The beheadings and the people in the Syria and the ISIS. Oh yeah, it's really bad stuff. This is how they get people on board to do whatever they want to do around the world, or even to you, because you believe everything that you are told and you reject things that people tell you to reject. So, question the things that you accept. Think about the things that you may not accept. I highly encourage this as a way to go forward in life. That's all I have for this video. That's all I have for my preaching and my proselytizing. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I always appreciate your help with this channel, your comments, your feedback, your suggestions, your links, your interactions. So thank you so much. If you would like to donate to this channel, you can do so at the links below. I hope to be back tomorrow. I hope it's a 4-letter word. I hope to be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.